emotes. I'll probably add some later.
Na'Vi and Virtus Pro, as well as the rivalry with Shikigami and other teams around that sort of playoffs position. Right, trying to see if they can pull things back, as 20% has already been made up from Reject.
Iggy's taking so much damage. Can we get some heals from my boy? There we go. Finally back into a fighting fit form, but doesn't have that diamond form anymore. And so moving towards this team is going to be fraught with peril. So much damage already taken, but luckily that Mantis Timber is going to be over-healthing the wayward Emma. Gargoyle already falling down. It's Brownie.
Damn! Finally, we get to see him ult.
Frag after frag.
Production's trolled every time he's ulted. Every time he's ulted, they just pan away or they just don't spectate him.
Yaki is just going to start working around the margins.
He's been hitting some massive ults.
The openings for the remainder of Reject, who are playing this masterfully from the two angles.
Yeah, they're having to reset now. They've got some ultimates that are built up, but it was a lovely 2K that came in onto Mash and Crazy Kitty, who switched away from the Wolverine, going towards the Elsa, so it's a double hit scan setup. Crazy Kitty is flexible. He's not just one of those melee players that can only play that. He is very cerebral in that nature, and both him and Smashnez were picking up Elsa back in the preseason when she was really strong. Now you've got the pressure coming in from Piggy over on this side, and the rolling flush that's going to be used from Mash to try and go in and contest this one a little bit more. Ultimates are plenty for Rad.
Smashnez on the angle. Where are you going to place your Meteor M towards Gargoyle? It's one and done for Ducky. Gargoyle's down. Two players remain. Yeah, there might be unlimited healing basically coming from Luna, but there's only one person to sit from said cup as Reject are scattered to the full.
Through the Luna? I thought that was going to get Luna too. That would have been crazy.
First capture.
You can hold that off for so long now, it's
crazy. Able to do
crazy.
that against 100 Thieves. It was 99% 100 Thieves got over on Celestial Husk on that first point, and Rad holding on, no mistakes made, able to flip it into their favor, and able to
like
win
that in
out
a fighting
on
game, bro.
domination there.
You're throwing hands.
Reject, they have got plenty of opportunity to build up some of these ultimates, but Rad are well experienced. They've got a really good crossfire setup across with these two hit scans, and a couple of ultimates sat in the back pocket, and a Heartbreaker on the way for Lugia.
We said no mistakes were made, but now no mistakes are allowed for Rad. One fight will do it here for Reject as Yaki moves in towards the back. Brand new Crown of Hades in order to try and get that additional stealth towards the back. And Yaki's just continually demanding all of this attention. Out goes the calling card, wants to move on to that very vulnerable Black Widow, and it's a beautiful combo from Yaki there. Next up's going to be the Rogue, trying to bring out all of the damage on towards that Vanguard. And it seems that Reject are picking their targets well, even with the healing that was supplied by Vertigo. Rad's victims were nowhere near the dance floor that Luna Snow was beginning to use, and so one by one they fall. It's going to have to be a portal back here, opened up by Smashnez to get that last second recontest. Will they be able to stop Reject from capturing, though? Doesn't seem that's going to be the case.
Smashnez has to go over towards the Strange this time. So
Gamma Strange, wrong team up, buddy.
Moment. Invisible Boundary going to be placed right on top, but a pause to just add to the suspense.
Pauses the game. Yo, switch your Strange team up.
Look at that Mento Fish has been put down there on the exit to a pentagram of Ferala by
this is the wrong team up.
You get out of the portal, you won't be able to use any movement cooldowns.
You forgot who you bet on?
Like the debarkation very, very perilous.
I can check for you.
I always get baited by that with Invisible Boundary.
You bet on Reject.
It's just a big silo in the sky. You know what I mean?
Who put this cylinder in the middle?
I don't know who I would bet on here.
I'm only used to one type of cylinder in my game. Thank you very much, Mr. Rivals.
I always get confused when a cylinder comes out like, who put this cake
We
here?
got some cool tattoos.
Who's erected a cake in the middle of my team fight? Who's responsible for this?
The worst part is when you have two invisible boundaries and you're like, oh, a Venn diagram comment, because they're like overlapping each other.
You're bingo baiting right now and you know it.
Yeah. I mean, has somebody done
Anyone play with their
the
keyboard sideways?
Only for NA, they hate you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like,
Didn't you guys play with your keyboard sideways like that?
America's casters, Europeans, who are they? What are they?
See what's scarier?
We don't care for their kind here.
Whoa.
Okay, right,
What did I just hear?
Sure we don't have to do any more
A little sideways?
Our
Like a little tilt.
I'm gonna make debarking from that portal.
Not on playing on
perilous.
sideways.
Yaki just gonna get his money up.
Mine's
Instead of
just
his money
facing
up
straight.
here as he moves through a bunch of these.
I got used to play with it a little bit sideways.
So too is the money. Piggy's already used.
I mean, it's not bad.
Here was the diamond.
Some people pay full sideways.
The Heartbreaker could be the one and only thing that Rad can use to turn this one around. They're already starting to flip the point in their favor. Reject
like
almost give it up
fully
and just play the
sideways,
long game here. However, Brownie falling down does mean that Reject are lacking options to recontest.
You've got Lugia that brought out the Heartbreaker.
I'd have to. Oh, nah.
The
entire laptop sideways is crazy. Okay, hold on.
Gambit and playable. It was one of the stronger teams to work
Son,
with. The Triple Vanguard might
you don't get you a keyboard you plug in.
They want to play through this and build up these strategist ultimates. They already have got the Royal Flush.
Controller upside down. You playing Armor Core?
He has to use the ultimate, but it's a similar case to the
They played the old Armor Core games. They play with controller upside down.
Session there from Smashnez. Can Lastro be hunted down is the question. Ducky's looking for a target. Just about managed to find Songu. The after explosion
armored
of the
core grip
Raging
is
Royal Flush is
crazy,
what
bro.
did it. But there's no one here to save Ducky, and Rad still might be in control of the point, but they don't have the personnel to try and make this one
Black
work.
Caskin is
The
at the
last
race one.
bastion of defense in Doctor Strange's
Yeah,
form.
I've never
Now
seen the
Lugigo
armored
has
core
to step
grip.
up to the plate. Symbiotic Resilience can't stand against all
Put
of
the
the
controller
arrayed
backwards.
weaponry that Reject brought to the interstellar spaceports, and so Brownie's on the
That's how they
hunt.
use
There's
armored-
no
that's how
one
they
to
play
make
the
the
old
touch
armored core
happen,
games.
and Rad is scupping away from our first sub-map.
This could be
Fuck
an interesting
no.
one. Did any of us have Reject and 100 Thieves qualifying? I don't think so.
don't
I think the
know if
closest
we
was
did.
That's not
Dogman,
height?
but he said Iconic, so
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying the closest to us was.
He's either the closest or the most wrong.
That sounds, yeah, that's the dog. It's like Moon Knight, isn't it? The split personalities of Dogman and Mr. America. Like, wasn't me at all. But like, this
Mucho
feels like
Maestri.
it might be a shock to some people, like Reject picking up the first map. For us in EMEA, for seeing Rad have these moments is not too surprising. And
Yeah,
like the
Widow
amount of
and
times
also
that
my
we've
most
interviewed
played this
Ducky
season.
after
My
a
third
series,
most.
it's like, I don't know how we lost that map, right? Like, that was something that we shouldn't do. But they're able to sort of pull back these situations. And, you know, this map isn't done just yet. It's more the fact the Reject with this, like, play around, like, the Black Widow, it's pulling Rad apart. They're trying to keep together to stop, like, make sure that they can peel for each other for Yaki diving in. But then you saw plays like Smashnet stun on his own. Calling card comes out from Yaki. Easy target, completely isolated, and there's nothing that Rad can do. They want to play split, but they also don't want to get taken off one at a time from Yaki.
Oh, is this a new overhead map? Swanky.
Trying to work.
Oh.
It's like the verticality of it, though. Is like, are they up or low?
Invoice on the
Well,
invoice
Yaki's going to
PDF.
find those who are moving
Oh,
through the
invoice
upper areas
PDF.
with relative ease here, and at least report back on the movements to the remainder of the team. We can see
Miss-
the Brownies playing
oh,
very far
fuck, I
angles
forgot to
make
do
sure
this.
There's this
God damn it.
constant pincer maneuver that's being threatened by Reject.
Rad sticking to the double hit scan as the ultimate's going to be used from Brownie.
I was doing a
Finds
bunch of
big
invoices
over on
yesterday,
Smash.
I
There's
forgot.
the leap in the
I
dive
messed up one of the
attempted from
files.
Lugia over on the Rogue. Is it going to be
One of
too
the
much
PDF
as more
files I
shots are
messed
starting
up.
to ring out?
Well, look at the appeal that came through from a Gambit as well with that orb, just consistently knocking
Put
back
the
the road.
numbers
Couldn't get
wrong.
on top of that vulnerable Black Widow. And Reject are once again going to win out the first fight here.
It's just how much like Rad can consolidate themselves here because
Claw
they
grip
didn't
is
really have any
crazy,
ultimates
bro.
to take into this next round.
Advantage for now, but
including,
hand
like,
problems
the Gambit
later.
ultimate,
I'm good.
Him and Lastro for MASH trying to see if they can build up stuff quicker, but it is going to be Reject that have a lot more to work with ultimate.
Y'all good. Yeah, I got it, bro. I'm good off
All
that.
right, Piggy looking to try and put themselves into the path of the offense. And the swap over here onto the Angela is certainly going to be interesting. Out comes the Glatrox, but it's just instantly burst down. There are so many guns. And Yaki on the other side used the calling card to decimate Smash. There's now using it as mobility tool
What'd you
to
use
chase
Claw
after
Grip
the Angela.
for drop
Used
shot
her
or,
assassin's
like-
shot to try and get away, but cannot outrun the bullets. I'm sure that one came
Bro,
through
I
from
just
Brownie.
binded
And
it
Yaki
to the
is still
thumbstick.
resetting off the back of the calling card. Certainly
I
feeling
just
himself
binded it to the right
right
stick to
now,
crouch,
as they
to go
force a
prone.
disengage from Rad.
That one-sided
Trick
ban
shot.
that's
Okay.
come in on the Black Cat on one side, like making sure the Crazy Kitty can't go for the melee characters himself,
Son.
has actually done wonders for Reject with the space that they're creating. And Rad in this kind of environment are going to be floundering a little bit more. They want to create some space.
For
Lucius
trick
switching
shotting
over
is
towards
crazy.
the
Hand
Angela.
prop-
They're finding this
Trading
space and opening, but Reject
Hand
is
props and trick
comfortably.
shots
All right,
is
Vertigo has that eternal
Yeah, I
bomb.
got it,
See
bro.
the Cloak and Dagger come out. Smashness is already down, by the way, and they were going to be one of the
Oh, you're dead.
primary players to try and turn this one around. Back up onto
Wait, she didn't die.
Terra Firma is Piggy having
Wait,
used her
what?
Diamond Form Graham to make sure that they could get back onto that.
Oh,
Mash Knife's
man,
fallen
she's
as
Diamond
well.
Form, I
And
guess.
It seems that this might be an ignominious end here for Rad, as they just can't find
Angela
any
annoying as
purchase
hell on
in
this
any
map.
of these fights. On Warrior Falls, they have been absolutely blasted.
And it's Smashness that keeps going down first every single time. And it's not like, you know, Yaki, what we saw before, or the players from
Wouldn't have made it easy
Iconics,
to
where you're
do.
going for the Black Cat, you get caught like in the flank.
Well,
You're
I
playing
never
Black
played.
Widow. You're
Well,
as
actually, I
far
played
away
foot
as
on
the
controller once,
action as
but
you could
I mainly
be, so
played on
you're finding yourself maybe
keyboard.
too isolated. You're not getting the peel that you
I
need.
use,
And even with
ZXE.
Vertigo and the Luna, you don't have the snowflakes.
to
Smasher
build.
might have a fantastic angle here, by the way, for the Gambit ultimate. Brownie's going to be able to find the Assassin's Precision in the back as well. Already to a full
Nah,
down.
think about it,
Vertigo,
though.
Crazy Kitty, there's
That's
nothing
so
to be
unoptimal.
seen. Assassin's
Using
Precision
ZXE
around
to
the
build.
back. Yeah, Ducky's going to be hit with
Instead
the
of using
back.
mouse
I think
controls.
This one might already be over.
'Cause you need to be able to
Clean
use
sweep
WASD
for
while
Reject,
building.
who refused to kneel before EMEA. They have
I'm
come
pretty sure most pros that play
bolting out of Asia
Fortnite
with the
now,
intent
thinking
to make
about
it
it,
to
like
playoffs.
they probably
Just
bind their
looking so
builds to their
strong
mouses.
over on that
If I had
first
to
game
guess.
mode that we
Because not having
consistently
4x
start on,
WASD,
Rad feeling
even
like
a
maybe
single
just
button while
running out
building
of
and
steam
running
a little
is,
bit after
like,
that 100 Thieves
unoptimal.
series. In a game mode that like has
That
been
parlay is not over yet.
wishy-washy at best. The problem, however, I think is like now that they have the map choice, they don't really have something that they're consistently relying on. There'd be stuff like Central Park, they're 1 and 4 on. Jalia, it's like maybe 2 and 3. Like there's no map that we picked this because we're like 6 and 1 on it, that we're really dominant. We win it all the time. Rad, I'm really curious on what they're going to be picking as their map choice. They don't have to worry about domination anymore, but you need to find a map that Reject are not going to look too comfortable on. And they're well seasoned and well tenured on pretty much everything that's in the pool right now.
Reject have been rewarded for their big investment here when it came to throwing so many of their bans over towards Crazy Kid. And I thought that maybe it was going to be difficult when you saw Thing get banned.
And I can't wait for Tokon. This is just going to be so fun, bro.
Reject were so on it when it came to their counter rotation.
So much footage I got to look at.
Able to get a good feral leap, and it's very rare we see
my friends, I got to look at some of the streams. See what they thought.
It just feels like one of those instances where, like, Rad, this is
The
completely
Mitsu put out an article today, by the way,
you know, like qualifying where it's
showing
the qualifying games where it's like in the losers bracket.
Oh yeah, are we getting a character guide today?
The actual qualifying game that got Rad
There's only like
here,
what,
right?
7 days left till the game drops.
In one day, a little bit staggered out. But this on LAN is pretty much okay. You just lost. You're pretty much straight into like the next series to play for your life. Aconics weren't able to keep up. Reject have done well considering they were the first game, had a gap, and then were able to sort of play again and sort of feel a little bit more warmer to the touch.
But yeah, Famitsu put out an article today showing.
Like, this is such a unique experience for them. Reject are a lot more experienced with playing on LAN, and it could be very easy to be like, oh, we're out before the final whistle's gone, essentially.
I mean, Reject are not just more experienced on LAN, but in competitive gaming in general. They played other games before this at the highest
They show
level.
the remaining
When it comes to having the
roster.
pressure pile on, these are players who know how to buckle down, how to lock in, and Rad, like, this is
The
a very
move
young
list.
roster. Like we've said, they've come from MRC. These guys have been thrust by raw talent into this spot. But when the
They got
lights get
Loki's
so
move
bright,
list,
that's when you're at
Deadpool's.
the most danger of falling.
Yeah, and I mean,
Carnage
especially
is
these
right
kind of
here.
moments, like with some of the highlights.
Hulks is right here as well.
Yaki has been superb, but
But,
Brownie,
I mean, you gotta have to translate it. I mean, you're better off just waiting for the character guides.
Up the game so much, and I can't believe that that is a sentence that has come out of my mouth for the esports scene.
Can barely afford
But it really
Tokon.
is the case of this
Better
character
sell
just
some.
really stretches out what teams are used to playing with the front to back, with the more
Better sell
deathball
some.
approach. It just really isolates some of these targets, and when calling cards
Either sell
available, it just
something or I don't
cuts
know.
through Rad piece by
Might go
piece.
Thor.
This was like that was such a disgusting
I
frag
mean,
to find
Loki?
as well off the back of that like secondary blast from the Raging Royal Flush on the Meteor M. It's a little bit cheesy in the end. It didn't seem to matter that much, but
Did you buy
it really
Avatar?
seems
Been
like
like fun.
if I had to bring it down to one matchup, Smash this seems a lot less confident.
Yeah.
On the Black Widow compared to Brownie, who is really getting either quite audacious with these angles or playing it safe next to the Gambit while Yaki like assumes all of a risk. And we see some great peeling as well. Come from
No,
Max, using
yo,
that
that's
Magneto
not
team
what I
up
meant by
on
sell
top of
something.
their
Oh,
Black
nah.
Widow to make sure that when
Y'all are
someone
freaked
like,
out.
Angela,
Y'all are freaked out. Oh,
they actually
no.
just can't stay in contact for very long.
I think Lastra, the best way to describe him is the whole like call an ambulance, but not for me meme. Like certainly as a strategist, like
Y'all
he
are
is
freaked out.
defensive in his strength.
Oh,
and I
no.
think the next map that we are going to is the map choice that Rad went for against 100 Thieves, Jalia, which you could understand if they're attacking first. That first point take against 100 Thieves and second was so quick. It was just on that third point and they weren't able to push nearly enough to make it a competitive map at the end.
In terms of our data sets as well, Hall of Jalia is actually an outlier in that this is one of the only maps where we see Hella Namor come out as a DPS duo. And maybe those duelists will be what Smashness and Crazy Kitty opt into, given that they have leaned into this in the past. Smashness
That
is a
beta
very
was fun.
proficient Hela
Beta was
player,
fun.
and Hella's got a reasonable matchup
need it
against
back.
Black Widow as well.
It depends how much, I mean, for Reject, you'd imagine it's going to be more of the same, like the Black Cat Daredevil bans, whether there's going to be a Protect there. Bit of a switch around, I suppose. If
Yeah,
you're
they're
attacking
definitely gonna
first,
ban
it does
Black Cat
mean that
again.
You sort of have the 3 bans in a row.
Oh, not
So
again
you
this
do
time.
get that Protect a little
Black
bit
Cat was
like
going
later
crazy.
on, certainly for that second Protect, to make sure that something's not going to be banned out right at the end. But it really
Yeah,
does
those are
remain to
long.
be seen. We've seen some of the switch rounds
Yeah,
as well, because
guarantee
most teams,
bar.
yeah, when they choose a map
Uh-huh.
like this, they want to attack first because they want to set
We tipping
where
for
the
wait,
map
what
is
the
gonna be
hell?
played. What is
What
your
am I
focus
reading?
point? Full hold? Is it like we have a bit more freedom because of the full push?
Yeah, toe
towards the
lovers
end?
are crazy.
We have seen that
I'd be
change
tipping
around,
if the
but it
nails
does
is
look like
longer.
It's going to be Rad attacking first.
Y'all feet like this
whether
are
there's
crazy,
enough
bro. I
onus
swear.
on them to actually go for a protecting like Black Cat or Daredevil.
Do we continue seeing Reject go down this path?
Y'all are
Spamming
interesting,
out
that's for
Crazy
sure.
Kitty's more impactful flankers.
It worked.
I mean, it did, and it also meant that
Y'all
like,
in
something
one
like
chat
Front's
as
was
y'all,
space to
bro.
work with. They weren't so worried about those flanks.
That's y'all.
Because we couldn't see Smashnaz really claim that
Am I
space.
buying the
because they
effects for
were
this Hella skin?
constantly, like cornered by Yaki, who had
We're gonna
not
Christian
only
Hella.
excellent flanks, but
I mean,
excellent
also-
flank control because they could see
29,
all the
damn.
maneuvers that would come through from either Crazy Kitty or Smashnaz.
For all our listeners at home that can't quite see the screen, you can see it now on your screen. Black Cat was protected first, which shows like Rad, we're not afraid to do this even when Black Cat was first
Damn,
brought into the game.
protected
Devil
Black Cat.
Dinosaur was the main protector go for. So
Yeah.
this is not too surprising, and I like that Rad have done this because I do think that some teams do try to play it safe of like, oh yeah, we know Mantis and Gambit are really strong. We're going to just play a really default draft.
600?
They're like, we need Crazy Kitty on the
I don't
Black
know
Cat.
about
We
that.
need some control of this, and we need to force Reject to go for a different draft than what we just saw over on Benim T'Challa.
Okay, now Reject know that they can ban
Yeah, I'm
away
not
both
buying
the
that.
Gambit and the Magneto.
Hulk's about to
which
be
is
Z
going to,
Broly. He probably
complicate
is.
Rad's formation a touch.
I mean,
but
they have to
obviously
drop the
there's
rest of
a
those
world
4
where
character guides
Rad don't really
soon.
need to lean into either of
It's only a
those,
few days
unfortunately,
left.
where you can be rewarded for taking the lesser known paths or the more esoteric approaches towards that first point.
For sure, and I think it's one of these moments as well where teams get very much, I think Cozy was talking about it, like they get so focused in on what's meta that they don't really like rely on what they're strong at, and
I like
Rad
the green on this
know
one.
where their bread is buttered with something like
This one's
this.
pretty cool.
Magneto's not going to be available on other sides. You might be able to get a protect here on Gambit, but
Jade
it's going to be banned out.
Jaguar,
Loki's almost
Primal Predator,
premeditatively set up to
Silver
make sure
Stalker.
that Lastro and Seung-Hoon can't run that same backline that they were running against the likes of Acronics that we saw just earlier today.
Oh, I didn't mean to do
We
that.
see
What did I just do?
protect on either a Vanguard or a Strategist here for the side
Oh.
of Rad. Maybe something like a Rocket to allow potentially a second chance if someone makes an ill-judged dive onto Rad, and that can be scuppered very quickly when you're faced with the danger of that constant knockback of the Gambit.
I wonder if a lot of people
You
bought
don't
this
have the Loki
pass.
to work with, so like,
I feel like a lot of people
Luda's
didn't buy
put in the
this.
Gambit just to make sure that,
I see a lot of people with the
we're gonna
mag
put
skin,
Black
but
Cat,
the
we
mag
can work
skin's
it, and the
free.
Black Widow ban. First
I
of
don't
its
see a lot of
kind,
people with the end
I
of this,
think, in Ignite, right? Like
It's a rare one.
Yeah, the rarest. Shiny.
This
almost,
JoJo
you
skin
could
is
sort of
so
look at it in that
hilarious,
case,
bro.
But Luna is going to be protected on the other side.
I didn't
meaning
buy that. Why
there's a
not?
little bit
You
more
don't want the
defensive
JoJo Adam?
capability. With no Gambit available, you have to imagine that it's going to be MASH that's going to go over towards it.
Okay, both teams have the Black Widow confiscated from
Brand
their pools, but
ambassador.
honestly, I think if you're Rad, you're fairly happy with this because Smashers, I don't think this is the greatest part of their pool right now. They'd much rather be on something like the
I want this
Elsa
Deadpool skin.
or the Psylocke, or the Star-Lord, and matching up with those. Like I talked about his Hela to begin with last time around as well. And also, Crazy Kitty gets the option to move over here onto the Daredevil because the second that you protect the Black Cat, like, there's no onus for Rad to expend a ban on something like a Daredevil when you know that Crazy Kitty still has that backup. You're not really going to squeeze his hero pool, so.
And I think some of those instances as well.
Every
so like
Spidey skin's on
Smash
sale tomorrow.
It's going to be hovering over
Shit,
there
I'll buy
at least
one.
to begin with. And Crazy Kitty, whilst
I'll
the
buy a
Black Cat's
skin.
in there, it does almost protect
Only
the
buying
fact
the
that
best
Daredevil's
one,
not
though.
going to get banned either, so he does have the option to play it. One of those few instances, but for Rad, they wanted to go a
Yeah,
little bit
Spider-Man
further
Day tomorrow.
play-ins. I mean, the organization has a title to try and fight for again as mid-season finals champions of last year. A different squad, a greener squad.
They bring
that is
back every
facing
single
potential
Spider-Man skin.
elimination on this first day of action.
I'm not gonna watch the movie. I'm
in
gonna watch the
LA.
movie.
Reject trying to sort of break some pick'ems. Predictions are plenty, but they're defending first as Rad and Jalia want to at least make it 1-for-1 today.
1-for-1, they would like to not lose out on their spot in the plains. A lot of us predicted that Rad would be able to make it out of this bracket, but maybe the power level coming out of Asia has been a little bit undervalued.
It's going to be Hela on both sides, actually. Going to see a little bit of the change-up as Brownie's going to be over on that side. And Luke, you're still dedicating towards the diving Hulk to see if he can make it work a little bit better than it did against 100 Thieves.
Interesting, and it is going to allow Crazy Kitty to have a little bit more bulk when they go in for these engagements. Lugia is buying so much space here, but going up against both of these strategists for so many
Ooh,
CCs to
damn.
try and deal with. You can see that already they got anti-healed, actually being chased down by the Gambit,
are
who has
dead,
no fear in
Jesus.
their heart when it comes to the Hulk, and now Yaki's
Jesus.
Lurk can activate. Moving in
Yeah, I
towards
think
the
Reject
back line,
got this
getting
in
his
the
money
bag.
up onto a low-key doppelganger. And
Reject's been
Iggy
playing
just
really
makes sure
well.
There's no space to work with for Crazy Kitty. Yaki gets himself a double onto the back line. Perfect play.
Oh, he's won.
Pulling apart, and this
Oh
dive
my God, that
immediately
move
for
has
Rad.
no
Luke is forced
cooldown.
to switch again, and
That move
it's
is
these kind of
busted,
moments
bro.
where you see Rad just like playing sort
He
of like
just
musical
used
chairs
it.
with the heroes that they're playing.
Nah,
They're
that
like,
move is
"Uh-oh,
insane,
this
bro. That
already
move
looks
is
a little
so
bit more uncomfortable,
busted,
but they
bro.
want to go for something to dive alongside Crazy
What
Kitty.
the
Donkey's over
fuck
on
is that
Deadpool
move,
Vanguard,
man?
Has got the bad hammer if you want
That
to use
shit
it.
got
But
no
Crazy Kitty now
cooldown,
switching over
man.
Towards the Black Cat, feeling that that's going to be a bit more
Oh,
poised
it has
to break whatever
iframes
Reject's defense
too.
is.
Like, what is that
Every single second
move,
the pressure
bro?
mounts here. This is what Land
What are we
is
cooking?
all about. It's not only is it about the pressure, it's about whether you have the strength of will to rise to meet it, and Rad are up against the wall.
Oh no,
No
bro,
more
not
mulligans,
like
no more
this.
second chances.
This is where a lot of EMEA teams do like start to shine. Backs against the wall, numbers down. Rad wants to show that they're in amongst the pigeons. Certainly with
Whatever,
teams like Heretics
bro.
left at home, and Yaki he has found himself the enemy
Oh,
of
man.
Crazy Kitty with that switch over. Black Cat's taking chunks out of each other. And now the backline dive a little bit more. But just found himself another one.
Trying to find this undefended underbelly. Maybe he can cleave through both of them. A quick roll in towards the back and an iframe as well as multiple players marked. Luke has already tried to make the space, moving over towards Sunghoon, and they've fallen on down. Ducky hits the headshot that's needed to find the frag, and the follow-through's good here. A fully charged up Axe of Icors begins to push on through, and the landing zone.
They have to raise the cooldown of that move on Black Cat. They have to. There's no way. The damage can stay, but like they have to raise the cooldown on that move, man. That move has no cooldown, bro. That shit is a 1 or 2 second cooldown.
Reject looked like they were sort of winning out on those fights. Crazy Kitty finds a bit more, and Lugia just goes for the flank, shuts the door.
She's literally untargetable in that move.
That they really don't want to be a part of, and the fact that they were
iframes and invisibility, that's so annoying, bro.
We just don't want to see the likes of Crazy Kitty.
Iframes, invisibility, and fast mobility. She used to have it all.
Not having ultimates in hand.
At least she's not as fast anymore, so she lost the dash. But like, holy.
They haven't really got early resources. They're looking for Lastro to try and help them build those up off the back of the Raging Royal Flush.
That move is
They're going to have to deal with the
disgusting,
Cosmic
man.
Guard Amplifier from Vertigo, who surely wants to try and claim
What a
the
move,
initiative
bro. What a
here
move.
and go first.
Lugia's found himself stunned and low HP. The strategist can't quite help him in this fight, and the Royal Flush is now going to be used, and it's going to be enough to actually smash through both of the duelists first.
All right, Smash does get resurrected by the Battle Recall Beacon, but Mash needs plenty of peel. Looks like they may have disconnected temporarily. Might be calling for a pause or potentially a reset.
Like
was
DC
called there
on
by
land?
Rad, but they're going to be kind of regretting that one as they still
DC
invest in
on
the
land?
Cosmic Amplifier, which is a
That's
major
hype.
tool for them.
Sort of building up a good pace. Fate of both worlds is handy. Duelists might have a lot to try and go in for this fight. The Smashlers wants to try and contest this high ground. This is exactly why Hella is so meta on this map.
That move
Where
was
Brownie positioned is set
disgusting,
up.
bro.
All right, aim check coming through, courtesy of the ban. Hammer in towards the back. Multiple
Oh,
players
both Hellas
grabbed
ulted.
in under Brownie by the descent of the Angel.
The other Hella shot the other Hella down. Oh, nice tether.
On the outside, but I believe they're cleansed there by the.
Oh, I didn't get to die though.
It was good movement as well, using the changes to the Crow to actually
They don't see
dash
that
out
res
and bunny
beacon?
hop a little bit, but Brownie still caught by the
Didi
heavy
is right under
retribution,
you.
able to survive. Calling card for Crazy Kitty now. Wants to see if he can force out more of these like resources to keep
Oh,
the
he can
sustain
still
up
see
for
you. He
Reject.
can still
But
see
Fate
you.
of both worlds used perfectly by Sunghoon.
Disgusting ring of Zonai to escape there.
Smart
as
from
well
Reject
by
to pull
Crazy
out
Kitty,
Didi
but
for
Mash
the
can't get up to
Black
smash
Cat.
snares, and nor can they get over the Crazy Kitty. It's a very sad dance floor that Luna dances alone upon here. As Jackie goes towards the back, the Devil's been unleashed, and Vertigo's found out the hard
Star-Lord
way.
dodge is
Asia's
nowhere near
here
as
to
strong as,
stay and here to play.
You take that a little
It
bit.
doesn't
for
last
Rad,
nowhere
though.
near
You
as
forced
long,
out, like,
too,
4
as,
ultimates all
Black
in pretty
Cat's.
quick succession, maybe even 5 in the end. The only one that they have available
Black
now
Cat's
for
does
Reject that's getting
damage,
close
dog.
is going to be that Royal
And the
Flush
moment
for
it
Lastro. So Brad
scans
like,
you,
okay,
you're
just
already
reset
dead.
quick. We don't need to
The
do
moment
this
it tracks
fast.
you, if you're low HP,
We're
you're
not
already
really that
dead.
close
Like,
to ultimate, so that's the problem. And Vertigo actually switching over towards the
if
White
she
Fox
marks you
means
with the
that they're somewhat of the way
Spider-Man
building up
Tracer
towards
team
that
up
Camille.
thing, and she hits you with that move,
Much there for
you
now.
lose like 70% of
Lastro
your
just
health.
staying on this perch, trying to make themselves difficult to get to.
Range on is real long.
Resources.
It's all about playing for this high ground, though. Brownie's been set up so well with his crossfires, and if Rad split, you've got Yaki that's hunting people down with that.
That move is just
information.
insane,
Crazy
yo.
Kitty switching back again to Daredevil.
At least she's not that
All right,
fast
back
anymore,
hammer.
though.
Good to go, putting it onto Luna Snow. Often can be well placed, and indeed Sunghoon's going to be the recipient of that one. You can see the attempted peel coming through from Matthew Murdoch, getting the charm as well. The control is there. Ducky has to exit and get themselves a quick upgrade on the other side, but Lastro lies in wait. The Raging Royal Flush, at least onto the remainder of Reject now, as Rad have to try and
Oh,
disengage
shit.
and kite this one away, but there's so much speed coming through
Damn,
from
that dude's
Yaki.
dead.
Still, it seems that Smashnes is going to be the sacrificial lamb. Crazy Kitty driven back into the melee by Piggy, and Rad is just losing so much space here.
And it was just off, like I mentioned, like Rad used so many ultimates. The only one that they had was the
Oh,
Royal
he's
Flush,
1
but they
HP.
got so much out of it. Rad
She's
is building up
won.
stuff, but it's pretty much going to be met now. There's only 45 seconds left to try to push past the second checkpoint, and they're just constantly being reset in clean team fights. Rad are just like, oh, we've lost enough. We're just going to
Reject is playing this really well.
They had to go over onto
This
the
might be a
White Fox.
2-0.
He's going to have a lot of trouble dealing with his poke, but at least doesn't worry so much about Yaki's approach.
This might be a
team up
2-0,
at
I
the very
fear.
least, but strategist ultimates are plenty. You just need to try and go in and work in these kind of fights and engagements. You've got a Goddess of Death on the other side for Brownie. And both Angelas take it to the sky to see if the airport is going to be very close for either of them, potentially, as they're fighting for it all. Rad especially have so much to work with, 10 seconds left.
Brownie takes to the sky, says, I hope you wore the brown pants this time, as Vertigo has to unleash the Kumiho in order to try and waylay the assault that's coming their way. Piggy sends out their doppelganger. The unacknowledged of Odin will make their way forward, and Piggy's ready to try and fight Heaven's Retribution towards the back. Yaki overextended, and Mash is there with the counter play, but Reject can just play this one slowly because they're still still some space to give up.
The aerial duels coming in from Asgard, seeing if they can fight for Valhalla, for glory, and Rad seeing if they can push bit back now as Banhammer's going to be used on both sides. Reject trying to sustain this one a little bit more. Crazy Kitty going down, Heaven's Retribution, pulling people off the point.
Nice ult.
Dreams of Glory might end here. Mash
Don't want to
now
risk
immune
it.
to CC, moves
I think
forward,
Reject got the...
Sunmoon ready to try and match it as well. The fate
Hella
of both
died.
worlds
Oh,
be decided
no.
here and now.
Okay, 1 for 1. Both Hellas are dead.
Smash is counted on the other side. Yaki's tried
DD
to approach, but it
ult.
doesn't matter. He's still just swinging away.
He's just
The
swinging
Devil's
away.
Shade,
Oh,
they can't
man, you
unleash on
can't
him
look at
because
the
he's
devil.
unleashed with the
You
power
can't
of
look at the
demonic
devil. Oh,
forces.
no.
And so Rad will be held on second and Reject
hero?
direct a wall in their path.
Rad can't quite even push the distance they were able to before. So Reject have drawn themselves a good position here, and Rad's defense needs to be solid, stalwart if they want to try to fight this one out and fight to live another day.
Refund my
enjoyed
points?
seeing, like, the
Hell
actual
no.
head-to-heads that were happening in the sky just to sort of maintain the speed and positioning. But it's like
Wasn't
when
I
the
playing
Heaven's
Venom?
Retribution comes in onto a Daredevil and it's like, I'm just
Guess
going
they
to
don't need it.
It's an AoE ult. I'm chained to the fence, but
Guess
I'm
they don't
feral
need
and
it.
you're getting way too close
Or
to
no,
me.
either they don't
Yaki's
need it or
been
let them play
superb.
it.
Both of the duelists are showing up massively here, and it just
Or
feels
better
like
other
in some of these
characters.
instances, Rad are not quite gelling in the
But whatever
same
that was that
Reject
happened
have
so
been
cool.
so
What the
well
hell?
known
What's
for
so
in
feisty?
Pacific.
Did you
A lot of
sleep
the
after
talent have
UWC
said,
or
like,
what?
Don't write these guys off. I just didn't expect the Reject would be the ones
Did
taking
you finally
the
go to
trick out of
sleep?
Rad in this case.
No.
Certainly going towards playing.
What?
A new
Why
team
are you still awake?
too many times. Don't have the
Why would I do
experience.
that? Oh my
Potentially
lordy.
their first-hand experience having flown.
So what have you been
thousands of
doing all
miles
this time?
could be cut short in the next 6 minutes if Reject can make it to their goal.
We're so excited to see these guys.
The Stoke
Majority of
field?
this team
Oh,
from
like,
Chopped,
games wanna
which
sell.
were the 4th place
Like
finishers
6:30?
before grand finals at Atlanta. We sent 3 teams from EMEA, so they were very close. Unsigned squad.
Oh wait, that was Shine that didn't
Now
sleep.
under Rad that has jumped
Wait,
back
no, Shine
into
woke
the
up at, like,
region
4.
after winning
You
the
woke up
region
at
with
6.
mid-season finals with the Rad team of last year. Now Na'Vi. The Rejects building up the best squad
I
from
only
Pacific,
slept.
picking up the Reject players and
I mean, I
Crazy
watched
recruiting
you
for their
guys
partnered
and I
squad.
slept
Really want to
for
sort of
like
set the same
4
level
hours.
as they did last time by making
or
it to
3 or
playoffs.
something like that.
An early portal will offer some safety
Now I'm here.
for the back line.
Then I've been here for
Reject
6 hours.
placing themselves on high ground and forcing a reactive
Well,
rotation from Rad.
You got Ducky that's over on the
I'd,
group as well on this defense.
go out,
It's
but,
like well
yeah.
known for big ultimates, but they haven't quite connected so far this event.
here.
And certainly when you got a Gambit and
Light
a Luna
work.
on the other side, that's a lot of cleanses, even
Be a
if those
zombie
ultimates
tomorrow.
do connect.
Duck off with a ramp to make sure that those
Look at
without
a zombie
vertical
after this.
mobility could get up onto the high ground, and Reject have started to throw down the gauntlet, accruing the percentage towards the
Seven
capture
today,
of the
7
objective.
tomorrow?
Smashless has to
Oh,
decide where they
no.
want to try and really put all of
You
their
gotta do
priorities
7 on the
into
final day
Piggy's
as
gonna be the
well.
first
Is it
one
3 days or
chosen.
4?
Doctor
Pretty sure,
Strange is
right?
getting a little bit too deep for my liking here, and so will be punished.
Wait,
And
did they do
Reject
a
haven't really been able
LCQ?
to get too much off the back of the positions that they claimed off the back of that
Oh, what's today's the
portal.
LCQ?
Yeah, Daredevil doesn't see much, but he sees plenty of gargoyles over on the cathedrals, the church that he's sort of known to go to.
Oh, that already happened,
And
damn.
that defense
They
is
didn't
a
they didn't
good
stream
solid
that?
hold to begin with for Reject as they're forced to reset. Changing up, Gargoyle's going to move away from
Oh,
the
wait,
Deadpool
Dual
Vanguard
Kev won
over
that,
towards
didn't
Emma
he?
Frost, which, you
Yeah,
know,
that did happen.
Great for
I
finding
remember
these
that.
ultimates to cause chaos
Pretty sure
for Rad,
Dual
which
Kev won it.
They're sort of known
Yeah,
and prone to
okay.
fall too, right?
Yeah, he's
Just,
been on fire
you know,
lately.
wait
He's
for
been
those
winning
big
hella
ultimates.
tournaments.
It can come out at any time. It's just whether the likes of Mash and Vertigo are going to be prepared or not.
Great neutral matchup against the Groot as well. Being able to farm those walls for the energy on the primary fire and then become an absolute DPS machine. You can see
oh,
the
what the
Gargoyle is
fuck?
taking a lot of that responsibility.
Groot
Happy
wall?
to do the admin because they will be rewarded so thoroughly for it. Vertigo's already down. How did he fall through the
Heard
cracks?
Kaiba
We still
played
had
on, what's
so
his
many
name?
resources for Rad,
Scott?
and now the alarms are
didn't know
blaring.
he
The
placed
panic
Scott, now, what the hell?
begins. A bubble popped by the Groot. It needs to be a turnaround on the backhand side.
everybody
but
got a
Crazy
pack-
Kitty doesn't
pocket
have any help
Myers
to try and
Scott,
make
though,
this
so
one work. Lugia
I'm not
got
really
no heals,
surprised.
but chases on the
Oh, you're
Sun,
dead.
and indeed the demon has been vanquished. Exercise
Oh, the
from the back
Schmoove man, hold
line.
on.
Yaki still on the chase, but decides that safety is the better
This guy
part of
got kinda
discretion
ass? Oh, I
here,
thought he was
and so
cooking.
relies on the remainder
Somebody
of
said he
Reject's
was
try and
cooking
claim
earlier.
this point, and they will readily do so.
And Lugia, like, the matchup's been good with the Angela, and we're sort of used to Lugia doing a lot of work in the MEA, but, like, Gargoyle has, Piggy's been consistently doing that, even, like, in some of those qualification
on
games.
a few weeks
Reject
ago.
have been known to have,
Tournament
like,
was,
very
what the hell?
flexible Vanguard lines, and I think that's
Wait, have you ever done a
the main thing that's
warrior?
shining here. Rad have that in spades,
Huh?
but it's just
Anyone
that,
can
like,
sign up for that,
online
right, I think?
experience that seems to be
I
the
don't know how
difference
those work.
makers. Really get to see just how good Gargoyle and Piggy are as a front line.
What's 2 in that second?
Pressure is real. And Rad have no more points to give.
Should do a War to
No
Warrior
more
and see how
chance
far
of
you get.
forgiveness. And Brownie certainly not going to be
Shit, maybe you win it.
as the monster is unleashed
Flow
towards
state.
the back. Seems to have not
Going to
grabbed
flow
too
state,
much
you
here.
might win
Was
that
hoping
shit.
for a Vanguard. Instead, they will grab nothing, but what an anti coming through from Lastro.
I did once in Brazil.
Captain,
Ooh,
my
cool.
Captain, he's getting it done. Yaki versus Crazy Kitty on the back line. We hyped
What'd
up
you
Crazy
get?
Kitty so much, but Yaki is looking to try and add themselves to a pantheon of flexible duelists as Smashnez has their mind broken
just
under
give up?
the gaze of Emma
Oh,
Frost.
DQs.
Crazy Kitty, not quite
Oh, damn.
feral, and certainly paling
Isn't
in the
that good,
size
though?
of the Yak himself.
Does he get to get far?
It's
Or,
been
like, I don't
so
know.
good, even though there wasn't much grabbed in from the ultimate from the Apex Predator. It split everybody enough for Yaki to find a picks. He has got the ultimate for Daredevil, and there's so little space to work with. now.
Oh
It's
hell
towards
no!
the end. Is
40
anybody
minutes,
even
no,
gonna
no.
touch?
This is why I don't do fucking tournaments. I hate it. I hate the way I can't do it.
It's going to be so difficult for Rad to try and rebuff for next
I hate the
battle
way
that
I
comes through.
can't. I'm
I mean,
just
backs
like,
to the wall. 3 minutes to try to defend, and there's very little
that's why
chances
I'll
left
at
to
least
try
only
to
do
make
content
things
creator tournaments
shine.
because
The
that's like a
Rejects
one.
sitting on with the Royal
It's like a
Flush.
few times a
It's
year
just
type
waiting
thing.
for the moment.
It's
I
time
don't
to
think I could
bring
ever be a
your teeth and
pro.
show the world
I
who
hate
you are.
waiting
Lastro with the cleanse,
for, like,
and Smashnez
matches.
gonna be punished for the
I'm too
audacity
impatient.
of their maneuver. Yaki towards the back, the Devil ready to be unleashed, but instead they can just wait it out because they see that the
Oh,
Luna's
shit.
dancing on the floor. Crazy Kitty gonna try and get the value off the back of this one.
The
Sunku
DQ
rolls on
also
forward as
went
well.
down.
Damage
Yikes.
boost onto Piggy. Heaven's
When are you gonna move to
Retribution will
NA?
be found.
Are you gonna stay in NA or you're gonna
Oasis
stay in
Retribution
Brazil?
be here as they look to try and slay the seed from EMEA that wants
Do you
to
even
take
wanna
them
stay in
from the
NA?
tournament. Now it's
Or
Yaki's
stay in
turn
Brazil?
to unleash, going over onto their counterpart of Crazy Kitty as the Devil's Chain is unleashed, and
DD
so
dead?
too is the Emma Frost ultimate for a lot of the action.
It's a scrappy battle in the end, but Rad is still holding on for a bit of time. Crazy Kitty finds that pick onto Brownie, closes the distance after Let the Devil Out was used in from Lackey, but there's still 5 plays from Reject, still fighting this. They're not disengaged in the same way that Rad
It's
did
kinda
on the
weird right
time.
now. I
They
feel
still
that.
want to claw things back if they possibly can,
I
knowing
don't
that Rad are
blame
going
you.
to run out of steam eventually, seeing if they can just find one more pick, build up these
I think
ultimates,
Brazil was
and
1 hour
Rad
ahead of us.
Maybe holding on just in case,
I thought it
but
was
just
like
forcing people off the point.
5 or something
Energies
else.
work with. There's one ult, one tick on the board, and that's going to be Brownie.
I feel like
here
most people that
with
watch
the
you are in it.
Glartrox. They attempt to try and bring in Lugia.
So I was always wondering, like,
how
how do you stream? You like stream at the nighttime for you, but then I realized, oh wait, you're like 1 hour behind.
The beast, but will the Apex Predator be found? They're trying to get the finish here onto Ducky.
2027
and just
winner, what
about
the
manages
hell?
to grab them, but on the other side, Piggy's been taken out, and this is going to give a momentary respite to
Free
Rad.
chat was for real.
Smashnez
What are y'all
has been a
talking
hero
about?
though. He's found 2 picks to trade this out just in favor. And now Reject are deciding after the ultimates they need to back out. They need to give some space here. And now just 1 minute for Rad to try to hold deep breaths.
Can
as
Rad
they're
actually
used
hold
to
this?
being in this environment, but not quite on this case. They're going to be speaking faster. They're going to be speaking louder, overcoming. But it's whether they can hold on from Reject's onslaught that keeps consistently coming in. A Royal Flush on the one-sided Gambit about to come online for Lastro.
Pressure
They about to have a lot of ults on Reject side. Emma, Gambit, Luna. Brad has Elsa, Luna, Loki. Okay, it's 3-3. Oh my god. That's a big pick. That's a big pick. No! Woo! He almost died.
Very scary as Smashnez.
That Elsa trap almost killed him.
Calm collected one on his team to just keep Rad
Yeah,
in
they're
it.
at the portal
There's
now.
enough to try to work with, but this is looking like it's going to be the
Which tank is
overtime
gonna do
finish.
it?
Whether Reject's going to win this one 2-0.
It would have to be Angela, no? But Angela's over here alive. No, Angela. Yeah, Angela's over here alive. They can't portal yet.
As Piggy just gives a
Guess whoever
love tap
dies
here
first,
and
he's
there,
gonna
letting their
portal.
presence be known. Lastro still leads that last
Oh,
2%
Brownie's-
here for the Raging Royal Flush. They can make Gargoyle move forward rather quickly.
Oh,
Yaki falling low, but
what the
Triage is going to
fuck?
be there. But still, Lastro and Sunhoon have so much to
Loki
work
lamps
with.
are gone.
The space is given. It needs
Gambit
to be now.
ults
There's
out.
no room to
Winning
disengage.
hand.
The extra damage is there. Ducky is going to quack his last potentially.
Oh, no, that's a big grab. Oh, he got out, though.
Both worlds. The healing's good.
What is
He's forced away
happening?
from the point. Brownie's been taken down. Piggy lands with an almighty roar. But do they have the damage to
Gambit
make
ult.
this one work?
You
In
need
the
to kill
back,
that
the
DD.
Devil's
You
been
need, I
unleashed,
mean, you need
and
to
the
kill that
back line is under
Gambit.
critical
Kill the
assault.
Gambit.
Vertigo
He's
copied the
healing so
Gambit
much.
ultimate.
Oh.
He went in and tried to go big, but it might have just floundered.
And now,
Oh,
Lugia needs to
no.
stay on this point no matter what. Ducky's
Oh,
also arrived, having
no,
opened the
that's
pentagram
not
for Arlos.
good.
It's going to be coming from Reject, surely in towards the back. Up comes the regeneration, the main.
That's why I don't play
It's
this
gonna be
shit.
a
The screen
prime brawler
cutter's
here, but inside
crazy,
regeneration,
bro.
the main, the
Oh, you're
damage is gonna be
dead.
Too much to bear. A blocking off from the
Ooh.
sidelines means the healing cannot be delivered. Yaki's there just in time
Wait,
to let the
wait,
devil
Rad
out,
is
but they
coming
all turn
back.
upon him. Surely there's gonna be
No
too much
way,
damage.
no
Really
way.
can't go no matter what. And Rad refused to kneel.
What?
refused
They were
to
winning.
bend. Reject will
Reject
not
was
stop their
winning.
ticket this time.
The cat is out of the bag as Crazy Kitty is found himself free.
They were literally winning. They just had it right there, and they just lost.
They managed to bring us to a third map, and that might be the difference maker to bring these
fucking kidding me, bro?
Out on stage. Rejects have the map choice.
Nah, this match is crazy.
But Smash, there's really the play that has been missing a little bit so far on the side of Rad. Just settle things up and set the stage up for a map 3 in this like final play-in game.
Heart is pumping out of my chest. I can't imagine how it is for Rad right now. And we gotta wonder, is the Black Widow ban going to be a key in this matchup? Smashnez, when they can mirror the Elsa,
yes,
where he is strongest.
I mean, that was the thing before. I think when it came to like the Black Widow head-to-head against
that's crazy. That's like, fucking crazy, bro.
But it's like the pull as well. Like, yeah, you go for the Black Cat protect.
Oh man, this game is ridiculous.
Not gonna ban out Daredevil.
One last match.
So there was still some freedom, and I think Crazy.
It was supposed to end there, but hey, one last match.
It's just about like having the options and forcing Reject to go in a different.
Bro, they were literally winning.
Their bans. I also think they're just.
They were literally winning, bro. Like, let me rewind the stream. Look what happened, bro.
One more pick, Bill.
Hold on.
Rad to try
I'm too far back.
The Gambit.
Devils with a move. So rather known. Yaki falling
it started right here.
It's potentially a Smash is going to move.
Look, they got a pick. They got Emma. Emma is dead. Reject is winning here.
Forward. Vertigo needs to get the second fate of both worlds. The healing's good, but they've been.
It's because the Elsa got Brownie. Okay, so that's 1 for 1.
Forced away from the point.
DDO comes out.
Piggy lands with an almighty roar, but do they have the damage?
But then DD dies here. He gets frozen, no? They're panicking like crazy.
Under critical assault.
Vertigo copied the Gambit.
And he's dead. And now Rad is down 2.
Went in and tried to go big, but it might have just floundered.
Rad is down 2.
And now Lugia needs to stay on this point no matter what. Ducky's also arrives, having opened the pentagram, but Farala the same is going to be coming from Reject.
How do they lose this? What?
In towards the back.
Because the Luna pushed up too much. Where's the Luna?
He's also
go big, but it might.
Where?
Critical assault.
Vertigo copied the Gambit ultimate. He went in and tried to go big, but it.
Oh, which? Oh, it's about Mash's Luna.
Assault.
Where's Mash at?
Piggy lands with an almighty roar, but do they have the damage to make?
I can't even find him on the thing. He dies off. He dies off camera. He dies off camera. Oh my, his health bar is moving like crazy.
Critical assault.
Vertigo copied the Gambit.
Yeah, we can't see him, but DD kills him. DD kills him. We can't see it though.
He went in and tried to go big, but it might have just.
Where did he die at?
Floundered.
I don't know where he died at.
Lugia needs to stay on this point no matter what. Ducky's also arrives, having opened the pentagram.
This shit is crazy though. Rad is down 2 and they still lose this shit.
Gargoyle's going to be the prime brawler here, but
like losing this is bad, bro.
Too much to bear. A blocking off of the sight lines means the healing cannot be delivered. Yaki's there just in time to let the devil out.
Because of the portal?
Surely there's going to be too much damage.
Crazy Kitty
on the card no matter what.
Yeah, Crazy Kitty just killed 3.
They refuse to bend. Reject will not stamp their ticket this time.
The cat is out.
That's sad. That is very sad. Oh man, that's not good, bro.
I think was the big name of the game towards the end here for Rad, and do
they have a replay of Luna?
The way that they were able to kite.
Did Luna really push up that much? Where?
At the right moment.
Yeah, she's right there in her ults.
And take out members periodically from Reject.
Oh, she died right there.
This is such an important moment.
Yikes.
Getting that win. And we were talking about it
Wait, what?
during the breaks while we were watching the games here. The experience
unless they're talking
between
about
these two teams when it comes to
I guess they're talking about Sungwoo, not
is stark.
The other guy. All right.
We have Reject who have basically been to every single event in one form or another under Crazy Kitty or Reject. Most of these players have played every event so far.
GG, bro.
Mash showed up for OUG at the grand finals, meaning that he is coming in to basically be the one person with
Parlay
the
still in?
Marvel Rivals.
Barely. You almost lost that shit.
Now
What?
they've had that moment of massive stress. You lost in your most important game potentially so far, and you just brought it back, and now you get a break to mentally reset. That could be huge, Ship.
I'm with you. I think we talked about this right prior. I think it's the brightest lights so far, right?
Damn, that could have been it. That could have been over right
You
there.
move or
That
go
could have been
home,
2-0. We got one more match.
Start to see the real grit of the team, and if they're able to show up, and in the beginning, especially
That
on
was
Dom,
supposed to be the last match, but
Reject,
all right.
maybe Rad doesn't
One
have it,
final
start
game.
bouncing back. What do you think?
I
felt like Yaki was just diffing Crazy Kid.
One final game.
Black Cat, it just was not working. The save, they were like, okay,
Brother, are you gonna yap for 10 years real quick then? Oh,
Maybe
brother.
that's why we lost. No, it was just Yaki was doing so good on it as well.
Dude, I want that Jeff
and
plushie, man.
Unfortunately, it forced them for Reject to actually make it so
I have to
that
buy it.
Brad locked in even more so.
Wait,
I
how
think
much
if
is it?
We didn't see as much of a struggle
fucking
from
look it
Crazy
up.
Kitty at the start. They might have gotten a little bit too just comfortable towards the end, but they were not in their comfort zone. They had to swap on the fly, and it actually found a combo.
Might be too late, I
Let's
think.
play off of what our casters were talking about a little bit here. Important bans. In the first series, we saw the ban onto both the Black Cat and the
Let me
Daredevil.
see if I
In
can
the second
figure it
series,
out.
We started to see the
It might be
Black
too late,
Widow
sadly.
being banned
Yeah.
away. Which
Huge.
one ship is more important when it comes to this?
I mean, right now, I would say Brownie on Widow was the reason they won domination. I think the off-angle plays, the picks were consistent, huge ults in moments that were
Funko Pop.
crucial.
Jeff, the Land Shark, Incognito Dolphin.
Yeah, the Widow was a big difference maker there, and of course
Oh
we are
boy.
going to the old faithful Museum of Contemplation. I know Cake's
I've never seen this map.
with
I'm
that as
excited.
well. We've seen this so often in Pacific.
Have to
This is just a
scan the
fan
QR
favorite for
code?
everyone who's been watching and playing in
Bro,
that
how am I supposed to
region
scan
for
this shit?
sure. But even then, I mean, Museum is the comfort zone for Reject. They go to it for a reason.
Speaking
I'll
of
pull up my
comfort,
computer.
a quick point that these players are playing on the Black Shark V3 Pro from Razer. If you want to bring that same competitive edge to your own setup, make sure to check it out. The Razer Black Shark V3 Pro, available for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. So all these players will be in comfort when
Let
it
me
comes
see.
to that. But
You get it
as
from
already mentioned,
GameStop?
comfort,
What in the
this is
hell?
the go-to map in every single region. When you look at the statistics, the most played maps were
It
usually
releases on the 9th. It releases in
then
2
was
months.
Museum, basically across the board.
We've only had like Midtown for the Convoy as the difference in terms of like
Should I buy
other
it?
maps that people have played so far in the play-ins today. So
pre-order
hopefully
it.
we get a little bit more variety tomorrow, since we'll have more matches going on then throughout the bracket stage. But yeah, I think we'll see the typical 3-3 comp.
I'll come here for
from,
2
Reject.
months.
They're gonna
Oh,
go
fuck.
through the Storm, Spawn Brick 2 in some sort of amalgamation. I think a big important ban though, if you are Rad, is that Rocket Raccoon. The Rocket Raccoon just with the
If you
extra res,
get it, you get a
and also using
downloadable
infinite
code
ammo
for a
with
Jeff
Punisher
for a
from
Jeff
Spawn Brick is
costume. That's
huge.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. And just piggybacking off your point, I think, yeah, we will see different maps as we get later in the tournament. I don't think anyone wants to show their cards yet.
$28.
It's tricky here because obviously this is win or go home. So I would expect maybe to see something different, but this is a comfort pick for them. So it's just the map that they're choosing. But
After
yeah, I would
shipping, it's
expect
40.
later
How
on
the
as we
fuck
get deeper
that
into the
work?
tournament, some of those more unique maps that
What?
you have, practiced on as much. different map.
Morocco, please.
Yeah.
Oh.
I do just want to bring up just how
What?
much
Shipping
our
is
tunes
$7
have
and then
changed.
taxes
We
3. Yeah,
talked about
eat
just how
dick.
much Rad brought it back in this series, but the fact that they brought it
Eat
back.
a
when we were
fucking
heading into
dick,
this, I
bro.
was like, Rad have basically got this, and then immediately, despite us
I'm not
potentially
buying
being
it.
non-believers, I want to shout out our pack companions
I want
here
it, but
for the
fuck.
Pacific region, including Keg, who was in the crowd and was talking up
Oh, well.
Reject to me the entire time during the last series, just saying, "Oh no, it's got
Oh, well.
Reject going through," and right now. They might be onto something because Reject are now
Eat a damn
the
dick,
team that
bro.
is in the
$40,
lead, and
bro?
Rad are the ones
Oh,
who are
my
fighting from
lord.
behind. They've only just evened it up, Rodible.
Reject should have won that.
Yeah.
They should have won that
agreed.
series
It was
and
a joke.
moved on, and we would have already been wrapping up the show today. But they wanted to give the crowd something interesting for our final
They wanted to
series,
give
and
one more
I gotta give it
match.
to them. I know the pressure probably got to them at the end, but Rad really locked in, and that's what we've seen a lot of times. But we've also seen a lot of
This
man
last
to
match is
man,
gonna be super duper sweaty.
It's true. You see the lock in here.
It's gonna be
of the Loki.
sweaty.
I think we talk about Loki a ton. That damage boost with those crystals is just too much.
It can do some serious work. The healing regeneration domain with the damage boost potential, especially with Mantis, but obviously Mantis has been removed. We're not going to get that particular team up coming on in, but Loki, it's a combo with Gambit. You can get double ults, the invulnerability from the regeneration domain, and of course, God of Mischief is one of the most potentially important ults, because if your opponent gets a strategist, you don't, just nick it. Just nick their ult when you need it, as we will see Magneto secured one-sided for Rad.
Interesting. So we have seen Reject really opt for the Magneto play in their triple-triple. So Yaki specifically looked really good on this earlier on today. So I get the reasoning for wanting to have that one-sided.
$40 costume is.
Yeah,
Well, it's not just the costume. You get like a whole plushie, so it's like
and they still lost.
it's actually a pretty good
So,
deal.
I mean, it's different here
'Cause
though.
you get, like,
It's
a
very different on a map like
exclusive-
this, where Mag using that shield is going to take up the entire lane. So it's far different, but still kind
Recolor.
of interesting. I think that might be one of the first times we've seen that today.
Loki going to be banned out, secured
What's
one
this?
side for Reject. We did see Rad really put in the work with that.
I saw a
There
picture
was
of it,
steal
but
at
I
one
don't-
point onto
Here it
Reject.
is.
Rage Royal Flush that was extremely impactful.
I'm curious if these are swapped as well.
Get this
for these
exclusive
teams,
Jeff
but
color.
We'll see it towards the end of it as well on the side, because the Rocket Raccoon, they're looking for one side for Reject if they can get it through.
It is an important hero on this map, just
Yeah.
because we see
Shit.
it as the
I'm tempted to buy
revive
it.
Rebirth beacon for the
God
hold.
damn it.
So it is viable, but it has been, like you said, a really go-to pick for Reject.
No, I am
Yeah,
tempted
it's
to buy
it's
it.
pretty crucial here for Rad.
Agreed, and like you guys are talking about, Rocket's
It's this
an
right
enabler
here.
for
If you
the
want it,
break
scan it.
and for the hold.
If you want to buy
so
it, scan
it kind of hits two birds with one stone here. But we can see the removal of Luna. I think Luna bans are super strong.
You buy a
in this
skin in
map.
game with that price?
The
2
defenses
legendary
that don't
skins?
see the
God
limits
damn
of
it,
Sonic,
dude.
landing so many freezes, just getting a little bit of extra charms, and the healing output for your dive characters, which we're seeing so much, is huge. And there's a Rocket secure, one-sided, potentially there for Reject.
I feel like Rejects have gotten the better of this ban draft. Yes, you know, Gambit is very strong. Yes, Magneto is very strong. But as you're saying,
Very
Shiv, this
tempted.
is exactly what we saw during Domination. It did not work.
Very
The Invis ban, okay, I do like that. But I don't know if that's the best option. Maybe it would have been better to ban the Luna, because we've seen so much
I don't care
more
about the
effectiveness
costume
from
again.
that.
I just want
That
the
damage
custom.
boost on
I just
shield
want
with
the
the
plushie.
torch team up though can be good for spawn breaks. We're talking
God,
about
I hate how it
so
looks. You hate
important
everything.
here. This is the map. Winner goes on to the bracket
You hate
stage
everything.
tomorrow. Loser is eliminated from the mid-season finals. I'm going to start with you, Shib. Who do you think has it?
So crazy.
She doesn't hate everything.
Just to be the contrarian, I'm
It
gonna
looks
say
like it's
Reject at this
badly
point. They look so good.
The
last
costume
I'm
or
actually
the
copying you
plushie?
again.
Which
I'm
one?
on this one too. I'm sorry,
You
Rad.
gonna
Let's see
say
how it
both?
goes.
Sprint to your region.
I swear to God, if you say both.
Let's send it over to Legday and Ride on the casting
Oh, the
desk to bring
plushie?
you home with the final map of the day.
Definitely
I
doesn't
know
look
somebody
that
that's not
crazy.
getting
but-
that return flight
I see
back
what
to
you mean, yeah.
Europe, audible, like instant, like. But I understand it, because here it's like Reject here looking so good in these environments, and Rad, well, shaky, but it's expected, right? They're getting that
All right,
experience.
last
and we
match,
have
chat.
seen teams go from these
Lock
kind
the
of moments to
fucking-
actually very successful runs in playoffs if Rad can make it. I mean, that's what the organization did last time, and they won the whole damn thing.
Well, now the pressure is equal. And Reject
After
are
this
going
match,
to
I'm
have to
gonna
be the
play
first ones
ranked
to
with
make their way
Eli
forward
and
on
I think
the
Def. I don't
offense.
know.
One of their main tools to do that's going to be the Wolverine.
Seeing if it's not quite the same like Black Widow, Daredevil sort of play, but Reject attacking first, Rad going on to
See if
the
they want to watch
defense.
this.
And really just the usual stuff,
Walk
right?
in,
The
Rad.
triple strategist,
Walk
but
in.
you do have that one duelist that's not triple Vanguard for Rad.
Well, Rad are going to be having to try and get some value off the bar on the Cooks here. Great wall setup coming through from Piggy to try and bisect this team. You can see that Vanguards have been isolated. Quick forced movement of Piggy, and yet another pull coming in, but rescued by the regeneration domain of the Loki. And Ducky didn't get any such resources. All they were already expended to try and fuel for that Magneto, and so Ducky might already be forced
Bro
to move over
walled
to the Doctor
himself.
Strange to
Oh,
try and
lordy.
teleport back.
Hoping that there's
He
going
tried
to be
to wall
enough of a
himself
touch there
and
for
wall the
rest
guy
of his
off.
team in the end, but it's provided Piggy enough space to put these walls down. A trade at the very least.
Chat, which team y'all got?
Pick off Brownie, but the BRB means that it's
I got
still
my
gonna
money
be
on
a
Reject
6
because Brownie's been
versus 5 for the
cooking
time being
today.
whilst Ducky's in
Especially with
transit.
the Widow. He's been going
He's put down
crazy.
so much poke
I'm a
here,
fan.
can't really be
I'm a fan of
answered as
Reject,
well.
I
Just
must
make sure
say.
attacks all of the entries, and all of these Thornlash
What up?
walls above the entryways are certainly going to complicate entry as well. Yaki takes a bit of a wide
Send you the
angle,
link.
could be risky, and can't quite get past that Gambit Orb either, but Lugia Ghost already fallen down to Piggy. Brownie's getting involved with adjudication.
These matches have been
and
sweaty.
adjudicated this defense certainly is. Reject are on
Very,
the
very
roll.
sweaty.
5 minutes per second.
Yeah, Rad.
Only
some
issue
of these
is the
moments certainly
break
like
they've been
Museum of
taking.
Contemplation, and I
You want
find it
Rad to
hilarious
win
from
Zens?
Reject to see,
Why?
like Pacific Region, Museum of Contemplation. Reject
Why,
played it 3
Zens?
times
Why?
today. 3 times. Like, you're not beating the allegations that this is just like the love letter, your map.
Happy
Crazy
NA
at least
qualified,
is gonna
though.
Go over to the Kitty, the Feline,
Let me see the thing.
themselves. But Rad don't want to over change their composition because you're
They have a
losing to
Black
an
Cat
old
player,
challenger
so
that you're building up.
you want
But
them to
also
win
that's
because
where
of
they start to look
Black
a little
Cat.
bit lost, right? They changed too much too quickly. They sort of lose their
Where's
focus on
the
this map
logic
in
behind
key
that?
areas of the map, no less.
Okay, precise rotation here from Rad. Haven't really had to use any resources to get through here. I've actually critically gets caught and has to use their
There was a Jubilee earlier.
big,
You missed it, though.
isolation here on the Vanguards, but you can see
Oh, yeah.
that
I missed most of it.
allow Reject to control this space
Jubilee was cooking. They were doing 3 tanks, 3
quickly. Yaki
supports.
gets dragged on in. Crazy Kitty on a good controlling arc here, and Mash is ready to try and answer this one as well. The second Cosmic Yarn Amplifier goes out. In comes Mash's response. The Raging Is that double? Oh, no, not this
But
time.
they're playing
It just
Bucky
went
again,
away
chat.
in the room. I think that there may well have been a blockage there.
This
on
character is so-
Triangulate Prison, and that's gonna be
Oh, here we
easy
go.
execution of Gargoyle here. One after the other, dodging the incoming blast drops of CC immunity. Lastro is just going to be feeding over Ultimate
Oh, I messed it
after
up.
Ultimate, but Songhun managing to get away is going to stop this train.
It was a big ultimate that came in from Lugia.
Spucky is cooking, chat. I sent you the thingy. You can join whenever you're ready. I don't know if you started streaming yet.
Royal Flush that comes in from Mash, but it's still
Let's go, Rad. Bro, I want Reject to win, bro. Oh, he's black. Oh, nah, this is over chat. Brownie's back on the Widow. He's back on the Widow. It's time to cook. There's been like a Widow like almost every match today. This character is without a doubt top tier.
Oh, I wish I joined sooner.
Going towards the
I'm
back.
doing
Here comes
good,
the last stand. They
CW.
want for Loki, and
I was doing a lot of self-study earlier.
Self-study? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I was in the practice range, getting a better understanding of all the tanks. I didn't finish.
How was your day? Were you doing that all day?
I went a bit more. Yeah, I woke up late, sadly.
I woke up dummy early. And go do some stuff. Family.
How long has the tournament been going?
It started at 1 p.m.
Damn,
like
I am
12:30?
late.
She sounds like she's gonna fall asleep. No, I woke up at like 11 or something. I'd do a bunch of stuff, family stuff. A bunch of drama. I can't say on stream. I'll tell you later or something.
Ooh.
There's T. There's T, sis. There's T.
Boundary. Good
Oh, what
to
the
go.
fuck?
Nice bubble to parry the incoming feral leap of the Wolverine. Great response there from Piggy. And here's the Cosmic Yarn Amplifier. Will it be broken down in time? There's a little bit of
Hit the
coming through from
Benjamin
Rico as well.
again.
Wild tech there from
She
Piggy.
hit the
But
Benjamin
Brown
is crazy.
inside of the invisible boundary, and so falls down before being resurrected here by the battle recall.
Y'all
beacon
are
of
funny.
Sundown. What about the next Cosmic Yarn Amplifier though? That's going to come on out.
Big
Lashlow's
Rocket
knocking
ult,
that one
Gambit
over,
ult.
and now Brownie's just going to be doing so much damage. Assassin's proficiency
Oh my
is well
God.
known here. Farewell to Smashnez. Bye bye Crazy Kitty.
Nah, chat, this is over. Reject got it. Trust. Trust in the brownie. Trust in the brownies.
Oh, what tanks? I was learning all the tanks in the practice range. I haven't played them in the game, so.
You want to play tank today? We can play on ult.
Good trade in the end for Rad, but then
We could.
that's when Brownie wants to
It's
use
up
the
to you.
ultimate himself, and it's just easy.
I'll decide
pickings
after
in the
this.
end. Clay pigeon shooting.
I got some characters I want to learn
The standout
anyway.
duelist of the day behind Delaney, you have to say. Brownie has been on one.
Once more, we're going to see this matchup here between the
Both
pair
teams
of
have a Widow
There's
now.
another.
just doing their homework here to not get isolated by the
These are
opposing
interesting
group. Just has to
placements.
float over the iron
What?
wall,
Usually don't
gets himself
see
a goal as
teams
well.
fight there.
Plenty of peeling
Oh,
coming
and like
through,
the
but
sides,
in
yeah, there's a lot of like
isolation,
off
Crazy
angling and
Kitty
people going to
takes
other
it
sides and
far
stuff.
away from the remainder
Like, you know
of
that
the
like
team.
Clintar map where like Penny puts their mines down? Like a lot of people go to the right side in pro play. So they like take off angles a lot. But not just one person, it's the whole team.
Too much of a problem for Gargoyle to pull out the ult, even though they have just lost one of their players. They're so good at just reading where the map
And
state
like
is
almost
when
every
somebody's
time
been
they've been on
caught out.
defense,
Chaos Blade
at
used
least
here.
on
Unleashed
convoy
the
game mode, there's like
Scabbo
3
by
tanks.
Magneto, but it would appear
3
that
tanks
Music
and
Kind
then
not
3
waiting to
supports,
breathe.
and they run
In
Adam
this
for the
case,
res.
Ducky
And we're rocking with the res beacon just so they can stall for even longer.
Proficiency is demanded.
That's a good
They need to
strat.
stop it
Yeah.
here right now. If
Oh,
Reject start to build momentum, this
really?
could be curtains before it's even begun. But Yaki is taking this time to develop an angle on the other side so he can unleash the devil into the backline. He's getting constantly harried though by his counterpart in Crazy Kitty, who decides to move towards the backline in his own right. And this constant battle for the high ground makes it so difficult for
Oh,
Smash to try
God,
and get
that's
an
not
opening.
good.
Out comes the counter ultimate. The strangling prison stops it. And Vertigo's there just in time with the extra on top.
Big
Lugia
Mac,
goes,
God
puts a little bit of
damn.
sauce on it, taking down Lastro. And while Smashnez may lose out on his duel to Brown,
Wait.
Respect
Rejects
Yaki
get
coming in with the
cut.
ultimate strength with prison, just making sure that the let the devil out is pretty much put out to pastures as much as possible. But Crazy Kitty has found Brownie just whilst the
Piggy
resets are
switched
coming
to
in for
Angela.
Reject, whilst he has the ultimate, and there's also those
Okay.
like strategist ultimates building up with the Iron Amplifier. It's a good window. but
Wait, you
this
want
point is still
Reject to
not
win?
moving an awful lot
Yeah.
in the end.
I want Brownie to win. Because his name is Brownie. And also he's been
Brownie.
playing crazy today with Widow.
It's fully
He's been cooking,
charged and
especially with these
powerful
ults.
battle station, but can
He
Smash
actually has all right now, actually. Hopefully he goes crazy.
These head-to-heads for Smashness today, they haven't looked too solid, but it's the damage boost on the other side. No Mantis available for either team for that reason, but the ultimate's going to be thrown out, just taking the pot shots. Hoping for
they've been running like Widow ult with Rocket ult and just tearing people apart.
Raging Royal Flush could be everything here to try and avoid some of this incoming damage. Crazy getting towards the back, ready to let the Devil out. Flasher already coming through with a doppelganger. The Cosmic Yarn Amplifier gives over even more HP to try and dodge through this. But when more HP is generated, there's all the more damage to try and chunk through it. Smashness making sure that there's so much danger of that spinning kick you cannot follow through. Gotta go around the other side. The
what?
I'm so invested, I'm not even talking.
I mean, that's pretty much how this beats. These matches are close as hell. Bro, please reject. Brad portaled. Bro, that
towards the Doctor Strange's Gargoyle with 100 energy is waiting to try and find an opening.
Ducky has got that strangling
It's a long overtime. Oh my god. Oh no, no, no! Reject, no.
Someone's got to get on to the point. It's going to be Yaki here, but they're blocked away by
There's still another round.
Cannon. Moving up closer. Overtime is going to begin to tick away. There are no second
chances.
Oh my god. Remaining members of Reject, but it's still a strong push.
It's another round, but they're going to
if they want to survive.
Yeah, Rad. When the map opens up, you have a bit more of that verticality with the point blooming out into this like double-decker train. Able to just make Crazy Kids have a bit more freedom to sort of work with, smash this.
Yeah, ready for some
really go head-to-head with the Black Widow on the
Shield?
other side in an honest
Using
game.
that damn
The
Gunnar
damage
cap
boosts,
skin?
of course,
Or
with the
what?
rocket, but just having a bit more open space really lets
actually
Brad set up. The thing that I'm just a little bit worried about.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I was studying a little bit of cap in the
You were using that skin?
Of
course. Of course you were.
Yeah.
Who are we rooting for?
It usually stops there. So it's whether
Infer's rooting for Reject. I just got here.
Reject even, they're very good on defensive side of this. They had good experience with
I haven't
some of
chosen anyone
the
to root
triple
for.
setups or against some of these like
I was gonna study all the characters, like to get a better understanding of the characters, but I've only been able to get most of the tanks so far.
Just study the characters that you hate fighting. Really, you lose against a lot.
Their first defense
I could. I mean, they're gonna come up at some point. But I actually learned quite a few themes from tanks, which I'm glad because now I'm like more aware of it.
Who do you see died to the most?
It felt like, you know, they didn't go for the portal place. It's like we have enough of a window, and Reject goes,
Lately,
you don't.
it's been Magic.
Sorry.
Wrong, actually.
Yeah.
Magic?
Especially
Lately.
on the other side, it's just how much you can set up in
I mean,
position,
now in this
because like,
season, but I haven't been focusing on who's diving me the most.
A mile taken, a mile claimed. Only one spot in our playoff bracket, and two teams that are desperate for
I know you hate fighting DD the most, so I'm not even gonna bother asking that.
Full use of the team up with Gambit in hand too.
Yeah, DD does suck.
Pretty much.
There's not many
like
DDs
the next
though,
level.
surprisingly.
Ultra instinct if he wants to take these
It's
fights
strange how
Sometimes
there's
he's
a
bad.
meta.
Resources, lamps, and
But
the team up with
Sometimes.
Jeff used for Piggy means he doesn't have too much to rely on to protect him.
It's going to make it difficult for Reject to take a more aggressive turn now, but they're trying to force out that passive here from Crazy Kitty. Was that Brownie just flying by on the other side? Manages to
What the fuck?
Cocoon Revival. The Smasher's doing so much damage here with
The root is super dead. Or not.
Is he? Is he?
Oh my god, his healthcare system is
that's
crazy.
though.
The
thing's down.
The instinct is built, but the space is being taken away. Gargoyle just runs him down in the neutral.
Yeah, they're running the 3-tank thing I was talking about. Reject. They're running 3 tanks with Loki lamps, which is really good, and then Loki can copy Adam if they need another res. It's just res comp, but with 3 tanks.
Oh, that's actually really
So
good.
you're just stalling like crazy. And if you need the bonus damage, Rocket ult.
Used to counter it from Rad, but you've got the copy that's going to go in. So 2 Yarn amplifiers for the price of 1.
Yeah, that's why Rad pull out Wolverine.
Cannot self-revive again. Crazy Kitty moving towards the back. Battle Recall Beacon not going to last
That Wolverine's
for
going
long. And despite the
It's not a perfect combo,
Yaki,
that's for sure.
It seems that there's
It's
not
strong,
gonna
but
be
like,
much to reward them for the
I mean,
It's
yeah,
strong.
Wolverine.
It's all
Yeah.
gone down the plug. And so Rejects are going to have to come back once again. They're already going to TP.
Yeah.
You have to have really good
Earlier,
team
right? They
synergy.
just want to sort of take
Yeah.
these engagements as much as possible, but Rad have enough bank.
Yeah,
up.
triple tank is
It's
really
just
good,
that the
especially
strategy
on
still
defense.
got used in the end, maybe even like
If you
Rad
do
wanted to
triple
try
tank
close
with a res
distance
comp,
bit more,
like,
but with the
It's
quiet, the
your
solemn
support to get
silence
ult really
of respecting this
fast.
play.
You keep resing,
They are going to be playing catch-up here.
and the damage is still there because tanks still do a lot of damage, especially if you run the damage ones.
That was a good Gambit team-up placement.
Huge amount of utility that's not going to be available.
Oh my god, the ammo ult is big.
That was good.
Feasting the White Queen reigns hands over the Museum of Contemplation.
They got 2 minutes.
Vertigo have no one to peel for them, no second chances, no resurrections
That,
this time.
Still winnable. Let's still reject.
There was no little cubby to try to hide in on, and Reject just go for the play early on and just immediately close the distance.
Wait, so are you literally only voting for them because of Brownie?
Yes.
But now it's
I mean, I want 100 Thieves to win, but they already won. They qualified earlier today.
You guys want to win.
Still, it's just the Meteor M knows used from Lugia Go as he's going to switch over towards the thing again. And look at how aggressive this is from Piggy.
Yeah, you can bunny up with that.
He's providing a node for Yaka to try and move forward with those embattled leaps. Attempt to try and turn this one around here from Smashnes. Gargoyle's fallen low. That's already been one.
I should show you how to bunny hop with Invis. Can save your life.
No, I was told to switch my scroll wheel.
Yeah, to up or down. Yeah.
I just used that though for my shield.
Ooh.
That's the
What
only
about
problem.
scroll? What about scroll
I could do it,
down?
though.
What about scroll down? Oh my God, this Bucky's going crazy. Yeah, you just try scroll down. Or bind it to scroll down.
This Adam is so difficult because for Soulbon, he's just
No, we have something binded to both scroll up and scroll
And now,
down,
yeah, an
right?
amplifier used to try to counter
No, but I'm pretty sure that would be very confusing.
Oh my God, this brutal.
And the patty cake isn't going to be enough to try to out-sustain this.
They got two of them.
For another Yan amplifier. It seems
Okay,
to be just
Loki ult. Loki ult gone. Oh, okay, Rad's gonna win this.
They've just got to play.
Reject's economy is bad. They have like no ults coming up.
No tricks, no Lastro to
That's deaf.
remain. And in the last seconds, they won't be able to match Reject's pace.
Oh,
but it seems
that was a good hold though.
Yeah.
Got it.
answer for the first points.
Still winnable. I wonder if they're gonna stay on 3 tanks here. Nope. Okay, they switched to 2. They switched back to 2.
You've got the Magneto back from Lugia. You've got Brownie switching over towards the Black Widow, and Smashnes doing the same. If Rad
back to
turn this around and
they're
end
back
up
to
in Pueblo
2-2-2.
tomorrow, you can very much turn and thank Smashnes because he has shown up where it matters. But this is a big battle to go up against. Crazy Kid is
This is like really easy to hold the first point. It's way harder to hold this part than
Smashnes forced to give up that angle, and you can bet
first one.
shows himself. Brownie's there as well, but Piggy gets isolated there, likely off a feral leap. This is what the Wolverine brings to the table. This is what knocked Heretics out of contention. The great play off the back of that Wolverine.
Oh, they do have a
and
Luna.
He's going to be able to enter into the back line here, basically unabated.
Has the ultimate
Oh, he's using the Gambit team of Wolf. I thought the other one was better.
Off, he gets grabbed up from the Emma Frost, but there's enough
no.
sustenance there to actually fight this.
Oh, nice pick. Nah, that was clean. That was clean.
Just pulled him back into the spawn again. Rejected just dropping like flies.
Out of the lamps and into the fire. No chance to build up to
Supports have been getting melted.
Ultimate Gargoyle's going to be the only one on the
Okay, I can't hate. That was clean shot. That Wolverine ult.
I am looking at Gargoyle low. The sign
And they
have come out.
they cleaned up this second point. Goddamn. Okay, there's still one more team fight though.
They're low-key dead immediately.
What?
He got grabbed by Wolf. Their strength out.
Yeah.
Oh. They're probably gonna lose.
Okay, yeah, they lost. God damn it. Wait, Rad might win this. No.
Be a last point hold, surely. Sunghoon debarks the portal, and Lastro's gone again. Just every time he shows his face, it's like he's getting absolutely blasted.
And so many ultimates still held on to as we reach second now with 100 meters still to go. So whilst it does look
Okay, well, this is the hardest point to hold, so anything can happen here.
Rad have to try and make sure that doesn't happen. They can't afford it to.
Honestly, he's been eating them up.
This Wolf is cooking. I thought he was gonna switch once they switch back to 2-2-2, but he's doing so well that he doesn't even need to switch.
Yeah.
Got to look at see, you got Mash as well with the Royal Flush. It's the one-sided Gambit on their side that they want to try to make it work. Piggy has been caught out of position a few times, and now it's both Julius using the ults.
Yaki and Brownie thought they had the power to make this one work, but they just get caught inside of
Oh my
Ducky's
God.
Also shutting
That
this
mag
one
just
down. The
oh.
bubbles to block the
Oh,
incoming shots
no.
to Pierce isn't there. Brownie
Not
now
like
missing out on
this.
so much of their damage, but still has the primary fire to try and work with.
Seems at Reject, it's been
Just
about
endlessly
attrition. They've had
staggered.
so many games to play in the end today.
It's a
But
good
Rad
spot
have
for
had the
her.
full 3 mappers all the way up, other than that 2-0 against Iconics. Now there's so little window of time and space to work with for Reject. You got to hope that
They have a minute and 30.
Right now, Smashnes
Still
is sitting up in the
winnable.
sky.
They have ults. They have Luna ult and Emma. Thing ult's coming up too,
Also
and Loki.
have Gambit and Widow.
Yeah.
For Rad.
Please kill the Widow. Please kill the Widow. Oh no. Oh wait. Big thing ult, I think.
Smashnes can try and find an angle, but it seems they've got nothing off the
Oh my
back
gosh,
of their
Emma's
Black
getting
Widow
shredded.
ultimate. Gargoyle needs to
Someone
disengage.
heal him,
Both of them got
please.
fallen. Rad might find it here with the wolf.
He just
Yet again,
soloed to the Loki.
Catches the hands of Crazy Kid. Kitty, and Rad refused to be taken down by Reject. They are going to the playoffs.
They managed to scrape it in the end, but this third map
Bruh.
looking like the team that qualified them
I'll
over
pay
the likes
out.
of
I'll
Heretics
pay
and
out.
Shikigami. Reject,
Oh.
they would have been a team for the majority of that series, but
You
as
did
soon
a-
as that
you did a
attacking
poll
side
for
started
this?
to come together
Yeah.
for Rad, Reject
I'm running
started to
predicts for all
panic.
these matches
Those
all
fans
day.
started to really rescind and look a little bit
Well,
uncomfortable. And Reject just lost out
Why
on
are
the
they
power. They're not able to make
finals?
playoffs like they did for the grand finals. Instead, it's going to be the mid-season
All right.
winners of
Make up your
last year.
mind.
At least the
I'm done for
organization
either.
Rad making it into playoffs again through playoffs.
Damn it.
Looking at our stats screen, what a performance here from Vertigo and Mash. Unbelievable healing coming through from them, but also Mastro just having a
No, I
terrible
voted
time.
Reject.
Being first pick
You
in so
voted the
many
wrong
instances,
team.
but so many resources were going his way, and this is one of the things you get when you
Well,
have
that's
that,
you voted the
Did you
wrong
mean
team.
to vote for?
like, you feel so much the second you press C.
No.
It's also
A refund's
like
too
Yaki,
late.
30,000 damage done, 3 final hits.
No
That's a
refunds.
lot of damage that you're feeding off the back of Vertigo and Mash when it comes to like the healing output and all those big
Which one was
ultimates that
Crazy
took
Kitty?
those fights in. We
Crazy
have to say,
Kitty?
like,
Crazy
Rad,
Kitty was
look and see
Rad's
as well, the Royal
Rad's
Flush, someone said again
Wolverine.
on their side that they want to try the healing
Oh, yeah,
output
I'm just
and all
looking-
of those
it has
big
their name on the
ultimates that
back.
took those fights in. But you have to say like Rad,
Oh, the jerseys,
first
yeah.
experience on live,
Yeah.
the majority of the team, certainly like in Marvel Rivals at an international level, the reps are only going to be good for them. They
Hi,
get to go in
Rat.
tomorrow, they get to go and play up against a solid team of like Good Citadel.
This is rigged.
Yeah, like you're going to take those
This is rigged.
opportunities.
This is
This
a
team
baldy.
just needs
Rigged.
the reps to actually perform well because we
Hmm.
know that they could do them, at least on
think
like
this would be
international
fun.
events. We
I'm
just
gonna
need to
flip a
see
coin
like
if you can't
good
decide.
in the